Oh, hello there, and thanks for joining Uncomplicated Math today. Today we're going to be looking at how to round decimals to the nearest tenths. And by the end of this video, you'll know the steps involved when rounding decimals to the nearest tenths. So let's get started. So in question number 1, we're being asked to round the decimal 211 thousandths to the nearest tenths. So looking over to the right-hand side here under our steps involved, we can see that our first step is to underline the rounding place that we're looking to round. And since we're looking to round to the nearest tenths here, we're going to underline the 2 here, which is in our tenths place. So now we can move on to step number 2, which is to look to the number next door. And whenever we're rounding, we're going to look to the digit that's immediately to the right of the place that we're looking to round, because the value of that number is going to tell us whether we're going to round our decimal up or down. And if the value of that number is 5 or greater, then we're going to be rounding up and adding 1 more to the place that we're rounding. And if it's 4 or less, then we're going to let our number rest and we're going to keep it the same. So obviously here 1 is in the category of 4 or less, so we're going to let the place that we're rounding rest. So our 2 is going to stay the same in our tenths place. But what do we do with the other numbers here that are to the right of the place that we were rounding? Well, as we can see in step number 3, all the numbers after the underline are going to change to 0. But whenever we're working with decimals, whenever we have a 0 that's to the right of the decimal, we don't actually have to include that because those zeros here are just placeholders. They don't actually change the value of the decimal. So the decimal 200 thousandths is equivalent to the decimal of 2 tenths. So we don't actually have to include those zeros here. So when we round 211 thousandths to the nearest tenths, we get 2 tenths. So now let's give question number 2 a try, where we're being asked to round 1 47 hundredths to the nearest tenths. So we'll remember that our first step is to underline the place that we're looking to round to, which in this case is our tenths place. So we've underlined the 4 in our tenths place. And now we're going to look to the number that's immediately next door to the right to see if we're going to be rounding up or down. And obviously 7 lies between 5 or greater, so we're going to be rounding up. So we're going to be adding 1 more to the place that we're rounding. So that's going to give us 1 5 tenths. And you'll remember from earlier that we don't have to write a 0 here, because if we were to write a 0, 1 50 hundredths has the same value as 1 5 tenths. So when we round 1 47 hundredths to the nearest tenths, we get 1 5 tenths. So hopefully by now you understand the steps involved when rounding decimals to the nearest tenths. Help make math less complicated by smashing those like and subscribe buttons. As always, enjoy today's math journey.